All right, so we're back. So it's been about, close to 5 hours now. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to add our seasoning and we're going to add our peas and carrots. I just looked, the stew is coming out amazing. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add our seasoning mixes here. Now, like I said, you don't have to use this brand. You can use whatever brand that you feel comfortable with, or you can season it yourself if you got a really good recipe. For this demonstration, we're just going to be doing it with this brand. This happens to be McCormick beef stew brand, or McCormick brand with the beef stew seasoning. So we are going to use both packs. This is a wonderful element here. It's going to give it a really, really good flavor. So we'll get these in and we'll stir it, and then we will add our peas and carrots, and then we'll take another brief pause while we'll let the stew simmer and finish for about another hour. So mix this in. Oh yeah. Okay, so we added our peas and our carrots to our recipe here, and we are now going to let this simmer for probably another 25-30 minutes. We added our seasoning, we added our peas and carrots. I can't stress enough how hearty and delicious this looks. This is going to be amazing. I invite you all to be able to make this for not just to feed your family, but to put away in your freeze jar. So anyways, I appreciate you hanging around this long, and we're going to take another little break, but it'll be just back in a couple seconds to you. And we ask you again to please subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@storecda, and hit that little bell button. And what that'll do is that'll give you a notification alert anytime we upload any content to our website or to our YouTube. And until then, I'll see you here briefly. Okay, welcome back. So now the stew has simmered, and with the peas and carrots in there for a good 20-30 minutes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add the flour to thicken up the stew. So what I do generally is I will add a few tablespoons of flour into a cup. About 3 tablespoons is all for this. And then I will add some oil to this. Now, what this will do is when we mix it, we'll make it into almost like a little slurry here. You see how nice and smooth that is. So you want to avoid putting the flour directly into the stew, because what that does is it leaves those little balls of flour, because the liquid from the stew hits the exterior and just basically turns it into like a flour ball. So by doing it this way and adding it to the stew, you prevent any clumping of your flour. Now We'll add it in. All right. Perfect. And now we will stir. Now look how smooth that is. You don't have any of those big clumps of flour floating around. So what the flour and the oil will do, the oil will separate from the flour from the heat, and the flour will start doing its job thickening up the stew. So here in a few minutes, after we let this steam off a bit, you'll have a nice, thick, rich, hearty beef stew for your freeze dryer. All right, so we're back. So now that we put the flour in, now that the sauce is, or the stew sauce or the soup has thickened nicely, what we're going to do now is we're going to pull our bones for one. So let's get this bad boy out of here. Get my fork or my spoon here. All right, put our bone in here. Let's get our other bone. Awesome. So another thing I did too is I pulled the bay leaves. You want to go ahead and pull those out. They've done their job. You know, you don't want to have a soup and accidentally slurp up a bay leaf. That would be unpleasant. So, okay, so what we're going to do now is we have our medium trays and our tray lids. These tray lids we sell on our website. This is a wonderful accessory. So after this stew cools down to room temperature, or actually we're going to dish it in now, I'm sorry, and then we're going to let it cool down to room temperature and before we put it into the freezer. The reason why we put it into the freezer is so we can pre-freeze it prior to going into the freeze dryer. Now by doing so, you're going to basically, the food has to, when it goes into the freeze dryer, it has to get to a certain point. It's right around -40, -50, where the ice crystals that are in the food, where they actually start to settle and become like a solid state. Below that temperature, things are still, while there's still ice, they're still moving, there's still movement at the atomic level, at the molecule level. And so basically by stabilizing the ice crystals in the food, which the freeze dryer does, pre-freezing helps achieve that sooner, and it helps in your overall process. And we prefer to pre-freeze everything that we do, I mean outside of candy, but it's just, it acts as a way to help speed up or help the freeze dryer achieve what it needs to do fast. So we're going to unbox these. These are medium lids. Now these lids can actually be used as trays. That's an amazing way to double your tray space without upgrading all the way up to stainless trays. These are great because they slide right on the shelves. You can put your fruits, your vegetables, things like that. I prefer not to do like hot soups or stew or anything hot, because you know you don't want to put something too hot in here that could ruin the tray or warp it somehow. But you know, fruits, vegetables, strawberries, stuff like that, they're fine. So these trays, they snap right on or tray lids, they snap right on the trays. And the best thing about it is when you go to pre-freeze, guess what? They're stackable. And now you can minimize your freezer space. Instead of having 4 open freeze dryer trays in there, now you got a nice contained area with your food. And you don't have to worry about you know, your bag of carrots or something like that tipping over and falling into there, or uneven freezing or anything like that. These things are wonderful additions to every freeze dryer, and we recommend you get these with your machine. If not, a set of lids, also a set of trays. The extra trays are great because while your freeze dryer is doing its thing, you could be pre-freezing your next batch and getting those ready to go if you plan on using this as much as we recommend. We try to encourage people, use your machine as much as possible, not just to benefit your family and you, but also to take advantage of Harvest Right's limited warranty. So utilize your machine as much as possible. All right, so let's take these lids off. And let's start dishing them up. All right. Look at that. Delicious beef stew done here at Sunblessed Farms. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel, or if you just happen to be browsing YouTube and stumbled across it, thanks so much. Leave a comment, tell us where you're from, how long you've been freeze drying, or if you're interested in getting a freeze dryer. We would love to hear your story. So that is about a perfect amount for this tray. Let's scoot this over and get the next one. I guess we'll scoop them all over real quick. Okay, so brief little break there. We are back to filling up our trays here. This wonderful stew that we've made. So many good things here. So these accessories, really good. We really recommend the trays and the tray lids. We have silicone mats. We have everything the Harvest Right carries. We even have tray stackers. If you don't want to upgrade all the way up to the lids, the stackers are a wonderful investment as well. Those still, they don't cover the tray, but what they do is they just sit on the corner of the tray and allow the next tray to build up and stack on top. So, but they are a great addition too, and they're a little bit cheaper too. I want to say for a medium, they're $14.99 for a pack. With the large, they're $16.99, and for the extra large, they're $18.99. So let's get some more stew in here. All right. So I hope you're really enjoying this series that we're putting on here. Hopefully we got enough for 4 trays here. Oh yeah, we should. Yeah, so this smells so good. So yeah, this is the great thing about these freeze-dried machines is, this could be your leftovers from, last night's dinner, the pot that was sitting in the fridge, or if you immediately fill up a pot, literally as you, dish up your family, you could put all your leftovers right in, basically right after you cook it. Start pre-freezing or cooling it down, and then pre-freezing it. So perfect. All right, so this is what it looks like with 4 trays filled up out of that crock pot. Now I might do some minor adjustments here because I might try to flatten it. You don't want anything protruding over the top of the lid, basically. So, you know, just try to get a little bit uniform. You know, take your spoon and try to mash down. Make sure everything is, you know, below the lid level. Doesn't have to be perfect. There is some room for some wiggle room when it comes to your freeze dryer, you know, but you obviously don't want to have something that's just, you know, protruding, you know, really far off the top here, you know, like a huge chunk of steak or something like that. But, you know, just going around, giving it a little tamp, just spreading things around, making sure there's no, you know, just making it, you're looking for uniformity is essentially what you're doing here. So yeah. Well, we're gonna let this cool, and then we're gonna get our tray stackers all cleaned up and ready to go. And then what we'll do is we'll put our tray stackers, or our tray lids on, and show you the process of putting them in our freezer and what the pre-freezing entails. Typically when we pre-freeze, we do about a 24-hour pre-freeze, and that includes even like if we're doing ice cream. So I hope you're enjoying so far, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is Mykal Taylor with our recipe series. This will be our latest episode here. What we're going to do is we're going to put the food that we had yesterday, or that we had cooked and prepared, and we had pre-froze. Today we're going to put it into our freeze dryer. We're going to show you the settings that we use for beef stew, and we're going to go through the setup of our beef stew. So what we typically do with food is for an initial freeze, we're going to do -20. Now remember that the colder things get, the more the water molecules inside stabilize. And so having a -20 at initial freeze is going to help stabilize that moisture, which is what basically the freeze dry process needs, is to reach that stabilization for it to basically create the sublimation process. Now with extra freeze time, we're going to do 4 hours just to ensure that everything is stabilized. The longer it stays or maintains at that temperature, the more you will be guaranteed to be able to reach that stabilization. Now with these, or with soup, our dry time, we're going to run at 125 degrees. Now this is what happens with the tray. So if you remember in Dustin's introduction to freeze drying, so what's going to happen is the perimeter of this chamber is going to be -20, -30 degrees, but these trays are going to warm up to the 125, and in that process, in the vacuum, the sublimation process will take the gas that's in a solid, or the moisture that's in a solid state in the food, and it's going to go from solid to gas. And then when it goes gas, the vacuum pushes the gas to the perimeter of the chamber, and it basically refreezes again back into ice. So okay. So the food, as it freeze dries, is going to expel gas out of it. Now, with the perimeter being cold, the vacuum inside, and the trays warming up, the moisture, which is in a solid state, as ice crystals, as it thaws, will go directly to gas and basically form. That's where the ice that you see, the buildup on the chamber, is the moisture that's collected while the freeze drying process is taking place. So now your extra dry time, you have to be critical, and I can't stress this enough, you have to be critical to ensure that all moisture is out of your food. Now, under these conditions, it's really easy to determine if there's moisture in your food, because everything in your tray will be warm except for an ice spot. If you find an ice spot, that means that part, those ice crystals, haven't turned into gas and left the food yet. So it's critical to ensure that there is 0 cold spots in your food. That is the easiest way to guarantee that there is no moisture or a low AW or whatever it is. So we're gonna start this with these settings. Now we may even come back and find that there is still some ice spots or cold spots in the food. So we can continue and add more dry time if needed. Don't be afraid to, oh my goodness, my cycle's up, the food has to be done. That's not the way you should be looking at this. You should hear your cycle complete and then check your food for moisture or ice spots or cold spots, and then if it needs more drying time, give it more drying time. Now with soups and stews, okay, so what we do with the fast mode here, with this, with stew and soup, or like spaghetti and stuff like that, it's okay to go into fast mode. Basically, all that's going to do is as the the food is freeze drying, there's basically a pulse of energy that goes and hits the food with warmth and then stabilizes, warmth and then stabilizes, warmth and then stabilizes. And what that does is it helps to basically fast track the freeze drying process. So we're going to go ahead and save this and we're going to start the freeze dryer. Now we need to ensure that our hose down here, which you can see is in the open position. We need to close this and make sure that it's in the closed position prior to freeze drying. That's the most simple way to mess up the vacuum process when this goes into vacuum freezing. I see it so many times, and it's not going to mess up your thing. You're going to get a prompt saying that it can't achieve vacuum to check your hose to ensure that it's closed. So if it prompts you, that's the #1 thing you look at. So what this is going to do is it's going to cool down. It's going to cool for 15 minutes, and you can already see it dropping in temperature drastically. So for 15 minutes, it's going to cool down and basically reduce the temperature inside. So that way when you move your trays in there with your pre-frozen food, it's basically closer to a stabilized environment as far as your temperature goes. So here momentarily, we'll be back with loading the trays.